The channel has just reached 100,000 subscribers. Thanks to everyone who watched, shared and supported it along the way. Your support made this possible. Now, let's get on with today's video. Imagine standing at a window in the Tower of London in 1553, watching a heavy wooden block being dragged into the yard. The cold stone of your cell seeps through your clothes, and a damp river fog creeps through the narrow slit of the window, chilling you to the bone. You're 21 years old. You've just watched your father lose his head, and your younger brother is next. The year 1553 was marked by political upheaval, with the sudden accession of Mary I to the throne, which shook the very foundations of England's power structure. Your family name, once the most powerful in England, has become a dirty word. You're broke, branded a traitor, and just waiting for the executioner to call your name. This wasn't a movie plot. It was the Tuesday morning reality for Robert Dudley. Most people know Robert as the handsome guy who flirted with Queen Elizabeth I. They see the fancy portraits and the expensive clothes. But if you want to understand the real man, you have to look at the man who spent 15 months in a cold stone cell, wondering if he would live to see the sunset. His imprisonment occurred during the reign of Mary I, whose sudden accession made treason a deadly accusation as she sought to secure her fragile hold on the throne. Robert Dudley didn't just walk into the royal court, he clawed his way back from the edge of the grave. He was a survivor who turned a legacy of failure into the most successful almost marriage in history. He was Elizabeth's sweet Robin, her eyes, and for 30 years the most hated man in England, because he was the only one who truly knew the woman behind the crown. Here is the part that changes how you see this story. You might think Robert was just an ambitious climber looking for a promotion. But look closer. Robert Dudley was a traitor who became the Queen's protector. While every other man at court was trying to marry Elizabeth to get her power, Robert was the only one who had shared her darkest moments. When they were both prisoners in the Tower, they weren't royals, they were targets. Their unparalleled bond transcended ambition and power. It was forged in shared peril and sustained by unwavering loyalty. A letter Elizabeth wrote at that time illustrates this profound connection. This is to assure you of my constant friendship and bond through trial and peril. This connection made Robert not just an ally, but an integral presence in Elizabeth's life. Think about the stakes. If Robert had married Elizabeth, England might have faced a civil war. His family was fleshed in conspiracy, as his enemies said, and he carried a stain that wouldn't wash off. Regional factions in the north, loyal to the Catholic Mary, Queen of Scots, could have rallied against this union, perceiving it as a consolidation of Protestant power. Meanwhile, southern nobles, wary of Dudley's influence, might have seen his marriage to the Queen as a direct threat to their own power and positions. Mary, Queen of Scots, with her Catholic supporters in England, could gain further encouragement for their cause, while Protestants could feel either emboldened or betrayed, depending on their alignment. Such tensions could have erupted into conflict, dividing the nation along political and religious lines and destabilizing governance. So, why did she keep him by her side for 30 years? Why did she keep his last letter in a locked box next to her bed until the day she died? We're going to look at the mysterious death of his first wife, Amy, and ask, did Robert lose the crown because he was a villain, or because he was the only man Elizabeth couldn't afford to lose? The answer isn't in history books, it's in the forensic details of a broken neck. Robert Dudley was born on June 24, 1532. He was the fifth son in a massive family of 13 kids. Growing up, Dudley was like living in a high-pressure cooker. His grandfather, Edmund, was executed by Henry VIII. His father, John Dudley, rose to become the Duke of Northumberland and effectively ruled England while the young King Edward VI was ill. Robert was smart. He shared tutors with the future Queen Elizabeth. They learned from Roger Ascham, who observed that Robert preferred mathematics and engineering to the classics. This tells us something about Robert. He liked logic and building things. He wasn't just a poet, he understood how the world was put together. In 1553, Robert's father tried to put Lady Jane Grey on the throne. It failed. Robert, his father, and his brothers were thrown into the Tower. Robert watched his father and brother go to the block. He spent 15 months waiting for his turn, but Queen Mary I spared him. He walked out of that prison with a burning need to win back everything his family had lost. When Elizabeth I became queen in 1558, Robert was among the first to see her. She immediately gave him a job, Master of the Horse. It sounds like a stable boy's job, but it was the most intimate role at court. He was responsible for her safety and her travel. Crucially, he was the only man officially allowed to touch the Queen, because he had to help her on and off her horse. They were violently attracted to each other. They rode together, hunted together, and danced until the sun came up. Elizabeth called him Sweet Robin. She gave him the nickname Eyes, and in their letters they used a secret code of Little Eyes. An authentic glimpse into their correspondence reveals the tenderness between them. "I kiss your sweet hand," Robert might have written. In one letter from 1563, Elizabeth affectionately wrote to Robert, "You know what you are to me, and you must believe I cannot be unmindful of anything." This letter emphasizes their deep connection and unbreakable bond. Robert was tall, athletic, and an incredible dancer. He could leap into the air in a Florentine style that left everyone breathless. But there was a scandal. Robert was already married to Amy Robsart. This is where the narrative becomes a thriller. Amy Robsart lived in the country, while Robert stayed at court. Rumours were everywhere that they were having an affair and that Robert wanted his wife dead. On September 8, 1560, Amy sent all her servants away to a local fair. She was insistent, even getting angry when some didn't want to go. Later that day, she was found dead at the bottom of a flight of stairs. Her neck was broken. The court went into a meltdown. Everyone assumed Robert had hired an assassin. But Robert was with the Queen when it happened. He was terrified, knowing this would destroy his chances of ever marrying Elizabeth. He begged for a full investigation, even if the news was bad. The jury ruled it an accident. However, alternative theories about Amy's death circulated and added layers of complexity and intrigue to the scandal. Some suspected that Amy's death might have been a result of given her apparent insistence on being alone that day. Others speculated about political conspiracies or even an accidental fall, given the lack of evidence of foul play. Regardless of the true cause, the incident cast a long shadow over Robert's prospects with Elizabeth. The scandal made it impossible for Elizabeth to marry him. She couldn't risk her throne by marrying a man everyone thought was a wife killer. For years, Robert lived in limbo. He was the Queen's unofficial husband. He had rooms next to hers. But every time a foreign prince came to marry her, Robert had to act as the host. In 1575, he threw a massive 19-day party at Kenilworth Castle. He spent a fortune on fireworks, and even built a whole new garden overnight just to please her. He was saying, "Marry me." She said no. She loved him, but she loved being queen more. "I will have but one mistress here and no master," she famously told him. By 1578, Robert realised he would never be king. He wanted a family. He secretly married Lettice Knowles, the Queen's cousin. They kept it hidden for a year. When Elizabeth found out, she went nuclear. She boxed Lettice's ears and banned her from court forever, calling her a she-wolf. Robert was eventually forgiven, but the magic was gone. His only son with Lettice died at age 3. The Dudley name was going to die with him. Robert's final years were spent trying to be a hero. He led an army to the Netherlands to fight the Spanish. It wasn't a great success. He argued with the Dutch and lost key ports. But he was there when his nephew, Philip Sidney, was killed in battle. When the Spanish Armada came in 1588, Robert stood next to Elizabeth at Tilbury. He organised her safety. But he was exhausted and sick, likely with malaria or stomach cancer. He set out for some hot springs to recover. On the way, he wrote a short letter to Elizabeth, asking how she was and thanking her for some medicine. He died on September 4th, 1588. When Elizabeth heard the news, she locked herself in her room for days, until her ministers had to break down the door. When Elizabeth died 15 years later, her servants found a small wooden box next to her bed. Inside was Robert's final letter. She had written his last letter on the outside. The real shift is this. History often treats Robert Dudley as a footnote or a scandal. But he was the pillar that made Elizabeth's golden age possible. He was her emotional anchor. He took the insults and the rumours so she didn't have to. He proved that you can lose your name and your family to the executioner and still become the most important person in the kingdom. Robert didn't leave a son, but he left his mark on every part of England's story. When you see a portrait of the powerful Virgin Queen, remember the sweet Robin just out of frame, giving her the heart to keep going. Over time, historians have debated Dudley's legacy, with some viewing him as a manipulative courtier, and others recognizing him as a devoted advisor and partner to Elizabeth. Modern interpretations offer a more nuanced view, acknowledging his flaws, but also his crucial role in one of England's most celebrated eras.